Ever feel like the world's gotten a little dimmer lately? Like common sense isn't so common anymore? You're not just imagining things. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a fascinating and honestly a little unsettling trend, the idea that society might actually be getting stupider. It's a bold claim, I know, but there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that something profound is happening to our collective intelligence. This isn't about calling anyone names. It's about understanding the subtle, yet powerful forces at play in our modern world that could be quietly eroding our cognitive abilities. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information or wondered why critical thinking sometimes feels like a lost art, then you need to stick around. Because by the end of this, you'll not only understand why this might be happening, but you'll also gain insights into how we can individually and collectively push back against this intellectual drift. For most of the 20th century, we saw something incredible happening. IQ scores were consistently rising across generations. This phenomenon, dubbed the Flynn effect, suggested that humanity was getting smarter year after year. It was attributed to better nutrition, improved education, smaller families allowing more parental attention, and increasingly complex environments demanding more abstract thought. The world was getting more complex, and our brains were seemingly evolving to meet the challenge. It was a comforting thought, a narrative of progress. But here's where the story takes a turn. In recent decades, particularly in developed nations, the Flynn effect hasn't just plateaued, it's actually started to reverse. Studies from countries like Norway, Denmark, Finland, Britain, France, and even here in the US are reporting a decline in average IQ scores, sometimes as much as 7 points per generation. Imagine that, decades of consistent improvement suddenly flipping into a downturn. This isn't just a statistical blip. It's a significant shift that demands our attention. What changed? Why, after a century of cognitive uplift, are we now seeing signs of a collective intellectual slump? It's a question that cuts to the heart of how we understand progress, technology, and our own brains. It suggests that while our tools and technologies advance at warp speed, our core cognitive horsepower might be quietly sputtering. It's a puzzle that requires us to look beyond the obvious and really dig into the subtle environmental, technological, and cultural shifts that have reshaped our lives in profound ways. We're not talking about some fringe theory here. This is observed data, and it opens up a whole can of worms about what we value, how we learn, and what kind of world we're building for ourselves. Think about your average day. How many times do you pick up your phone? How many tabs do you have open right now? Our lives are dominated by screens, and while they offer incredible access to information and connection, they also come with a hidden cost: our attention. We're living in what's been called the attention economy, where every app, every website, every notification is designed to snatch and hold onto your gaze for as long as possible. The result? We're constantly bombarded with snippets of information, rapid-fire content, and an endless stream of distractions. Our brains, which once adapted to focused, linear processing, like reading a book for hours or solving a complex problem, are now being retrained. We're getting really good at context switching, at scanning, at skimming. But this comes at the expense of deep focus, sustained concentration, and the ability to truly immerse ourselves in a single task or idea. When was the last time you sat down for an hour with just your thoughts or a single challenging text without feeling the urge to check your phone or open another browser tab? This isn't just about being distracted. It's about fundamentally altering the neural pathways that support sustained cognitive effort. Our default mode is becoming one of constant, superficial stimulation. We're training ourselves to crave novelty and instant gratification, making the quiet, demanding work of deep thought feel increasingly arduous. It's like trying to run a marathon after only training for a series of short sprints. The muscles needed for endurance just aren't there. This constant mental fragmentation makes it harder to form coherent thoughts, to synthesize complex ideas, or to engage in critical analysis. We're losing the art of letting our minds wander productively, of wrestling with a single concept until it truly clicks. Instead, we graze, we flit, we scroll. And in doing so, we might be inadvertently dimming the very capacity for intelligence that requires sustained, undistracted engagement. Our brains are incredibly adaptable, and right now they're adapting to a world that prioritizes breadth over depth, speed over understanding. And that, my friends, is a trade-off with significant consequences for our collective intellectual horsepower. Never before has so much information been so readily available to so many. We carry the entire sum of human knowledge in our pockets. Sounds like a recipe for a smarter society, right? But here's the paradox. Easy access to information doesn't automatically translate into wisdom, understanding, or critical thinking. In fact, it often leads to the opposite. Information overload, superficial understanding, and a breeding ground for misinformation. Think about it. When you can Google anything in seconds, do you still feel the need to deeply learn it? To really grapple with the nuances, to understand the underlying principles, to connect it to broader concepts? For many, the answer is no. We rely on external sources to hold our knowledge, rather than internalizing it and building robust mental models. It's like having a gigantic library at your disposal, but only ever reading the titles and first sentences. You get the illusion of knowing a lot, but the actual depth of understanding is incredibly shallow. What's worse, this deluge of data often comes without context, without curation, and without a built-in filter for accuracy. We're swimming in a sea of opinions, half-truths, and outright fabrications, all presented with equal authority. Discerning credible sources from propaganda or well-researched facts from clickbait requires significant critical thinking skills. But if our attention spans are shrinking and our deep processing abilities are diminishing, how well equipped are we to perform this vital filtering? We become more susceptible to confirmation bias, retreating into echo chambers where our existing beliefs are constantly reinforced, making us less open to new ideas or challenging perspectives. The sheer volume makes us mentally exhausted, often leading us to accept the easiest or most emotionally satisfying answer rather than the most rigorously thought-out one. This isn't a knock on the internet itself. It's a reflection on how we use it. We've mistaken data for wisdom, and easy access for true understanding. And in doing so, we might be creating a society that's rich in information, but poor in actual applied intelligence. Our education systems are supposed to be the foundational engine of intelligence, teaching us how to think, not just what to think. But are they still performing that vital role effectively? There's a growing concern that modern education, particularly in the U.S., has shifted away from fostering genuine critical thinking and problem-solving towards something more utilitarian. We've seen an increasing emphasis on standardized testing, which often prioritizes rote memorization and the ability to follow specific instructions over creative thought or deep conceptual understanding. When teachers are pressured to teach to the test, the curriculum naturally narrows. The rich, meandering discussions, the philosophical debates, the open-ended projects that truly stretch a young mind, these often get sidelined in favor of measurable outcomes. Furthermore, there's been a gradual de-emphasis on the humanities, philosophy, and arts, subjects that are absolutely crucial for developing nuanced thinking, empathy, and the ability to grapple with complex, ambiguous problems. These disciplines teach us to question, to analyze motives, to understand different perspectives, and to articulate our thoughts clearly. When funding and focus shift predominantly to STEM, while vital, it can leave a gaping hole in the holistic development of intellectual capacity. We need engineers and scientists, absolutely, but we also need people who can think critically about the implications of technological advancement, who can understand history and culture, and who can engage in ethical reasoning. Beyond the curriculum, the very experience of learning has changed. With the pervasive influence of technology, are students truly learning how to research deeply or just how to quickly find answers online? Are they developing resilience in problem solving, or do they give up when a solution isn't immediately apparent? The classroom, once a crucible for intellectual growth through direct interaction and sustained effort, now competes with 1,000 digital distractions. If the very institutions designed to cultivate intelligence are facing these challenges, it's no wonder we might see a downstream effect on society's overall cognitive health. We're educating for efficiency and measurable output, but perhaps at the cost of fostering truly intelligent, adaptable, and deeply thoughtful individuals. We often think of intelligence as purely mental, but our brains are physical organs, just like our hearts or lungs. And like any organ, they need proper fuel and maintenance to function optimally. So let's talk about lifestyle. What are we eating? How much are we sleeping? And how active are we? It turns out our modern habits might be slowly but surely draining our cognitive reserves. First, diet. Our supermarkets are overflowing with ultra-processed foods high in sugar, unhealthy fats, and artificial ingredients. These foods are designed to be addictive, but they offer very little nutritional value for a developing or aging brain. A diet rich in processed foods has been linked to inflammation, reduced cognitive function, and even an increased risk of neurological disorders. Our brains thrive on healthy fats, complex carbohydrates, and a wide array of vitamins and minerals found in whole, unprocessed foods. When we deprive our brains of these essential building blocks, we're essentially asking them to run on fumes. Then there's sleep. In our 24/7 world, sleep is often the first thing to get sacrificed. We binge watch, we scroll, we work late. But sleep isn't just downtime. It's when our brains consolidate memories, clear out metabolic waste, and repair themselves. Chronic sleep deprivation has a direct, measurable impact on attention, memory, problem-solving, and emotional regulation. It literally makes us dumber in the short term, and the long-term effects are even more concerning. And finally, physical activity. We're a more sedentary society than ever before. We sit for hours at work, we commute in cars, and our entertainment often involves lounging on a couch. But exercise isn't just good for your body. It's phenomenal for your brain. Physical activity increases blood flow to the brain, promotes the growth of new brain cells, and boosts neurotransmitters that are crucial for mood and cognition. When we're physically inactive, our brains suffer. So, while we're constantly seeking intellectual stimulation, we might be neglecting the very basic biological needs that underpin all cognitive function. It's a fundamental disconnect. We expect peak performance from our brains while treating them like an afterthought when it comes to basic care. Social media was supposed to connect us, to open up dialogues, and to expose us to a diverse range of ideas. And in some ways it does. But it also has a darker side, the echo chamber. Algorithms are designed to show us more of what we already like, what we already agree with, and what keeps us engaged. This means we're increasingly living in personalized information bubbles, where our existing beliefs are constantly reinforced and dissenting viewpoints are filtered out. When you're only exposed to information that validates your worldview, your critical thinking muscles start to atrophy. There's no need to rigorously evaluate an argument if everyone you follow already agrees with it. There's no challenge to your assumptions, no need to wrestle with complex, uncomfortable truths. This isn't just about political polarization. It affects every aspect of our intellectual landscape. We become less tolerant of ambiguity, less capable of holding contradictory ideas in our minds, and less equipped to engage in constructive debate. Furthermore, online interactions often lack the nuances of face-to-face communication. We miss body language, tone of voice, and the subtle cues that foster empathy and mutual understanding. This can lead to more aggressive, less thoughtful exchanges, where the goal isn't to understand, but to win, or to simply express outrage. When our primary mode of intellectual engagement becomes shouting past each other in digital spaces, it erodes our ability to build shared understanding and to collectively solve complex problems. We're losing the art of intellectual humility, the willingness to admit we might be wrong, and the capacity to genuinely listen and learn from those who see the world differently. This tribalization of thought might feel comforting in the short term, but it severely limits our collective intellectual potential, pushing us further apart rather than bringing us together to solve the truly big issues. Remember when people would spend hours uninterrupted on a single, complex task? A writer crafting a novel, a scientist meticulously working through an experiment, an artist lost in their creation. That's deep work, the ability to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task. It's the engine of real innovation, profound insight, and the mastery of difficult skills. But in our hyper-connected, always-on world, deep work is becoming an endangered species. The constant pings from our phones, the endless stream of emails, the lure of social media, the pull of YouTube videos, they all conspire to break our concentration. We jump from one shallow task to another, mistaking busyness for productivity. We chip away at things, but rarely dedicate the sustained, uninterrupted mental energy needed to truly solve a hard problem or develop a nuanced understanding. Think about the effort required to read a challenging philosophy book, or to learn a new programming language, or to compose a piece of music. These aren't tasks you can accomplish in 15-minute bursts between checking Instagram. They demand hours of undivided attention, the willingness to push through mental friction, and the discipline to ignore distractions. When we rarely practice this kind of sustained focus, our capacity for it diminishes. Our brains become accustomed to constant novelty and superficial engagement, making the heavy lifting of deep thought feel increasingly unpleasant and difficult. We're losing the mental stamina required for complex problem-solving and true creativity. And if we can't do deep work, if we can't think deeply, how can we expect to make significant intellectual strides, either individually or as a society? We're trading the potential for profound insight for the immediate, fleeting gratification of constant stimulation. It's a dangerous bargain for our collective intelligence. Intelligence isn't just about IQ scores or problem solving. It's also profoundly social. Our ability to understand, relate to, and navigate complex social situations, often called emotional or social intelligence, is crucial for a functioning society. It's what allows us to collaborate, to compromise, to build communities, and to resolve conflicts peacefully. But there's a growing concern that this vital component of human intelligence might also be in decline. Think about how much less face-to-face interaction we have compared to even a generation ago. Our communication often happens through screens, where we can carefully curate our personas, avoid eye contact, and miss out on the subtle cues that are so essential for developing empathy. It's hard to truly understand someone's emotional state from a text message or a comment online. We're losing the practice of reading body language, interpreting tone of voice, and responding in real time to another person's authentic presence. This doesn't mean we're inherently less caring, but it does mean we're getting less practice in the delicate art of emotional attunement. Moreover, the digital world can often foster a sense of detachment. It's easier to be harsh, dismissive, or even cruel to someone when they're just an avatar or a username on a screen. This lack of consequence in digital interactions can bleed into real-world behavior, leading to a general coarsening of discourse and a reduction in our collective capacity for compassion and understanding. When we struggle to truly connect with and understand others, our ability to cooperate on complex societal challenges diminishes. It becomes harder to find common ground, to see issues from multiple perspectives, or to work together towards shared solutions. If our social intelligence is indeed slipping, it's not just a personal failing. It's a societal one, impacting our very ability to function as a cohesive, empathetic, and intelligently collaborative community. So we've covered a lot of ground today. From the puzzling reversal of the Flynn effect, indicating a measurable decline in cognitive abilities, to the insidious erosion of our attention spans by constant digital distraction. We've talked about how information overload can create the illusion of knowledge without fostering true wisdom, and how our educational systems might be inadvertently stifling critical thought. We've explored the fundamental impact of lifestyle, what we eat, how we sleep, and how much we move on our brain health. And we delved into how echo chambers and the decline of deep work are making us less capable of nuanced understanding and sustained focus, potentially impacting our social intelligence and empathy. This isn't about doomsaying. It's about honestly assessing the challenges facing our minds in this rapidly evolving world. If any of this resonated with you, I want to hear your thoughts. What changes have you noticed in your own life or in society that speak to this trend? Share your experiences and insights in the comments below. And if you found this discussion thought-provoking, please hit that like button, subscribe for more philosophical explorations, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Let's keep this important conversation going.